de commencer par ces sujets-là, car la situation en Ukraine est loin d'être résolue. Et pour nous, dans l'Agence internationale d'énergie atomique à Vienne, notre capacité d'aider et notre mission même dans le domaine de la sécurité, de la sûreté nucléaire nous impose d'être présents, de travailler très près avec l'Ukraine et d'autres partenaires pour essayer d'éviter qu'à la tragédie de la guerre s'ajoutent des conséquences dérivées d'un accident nucléaire qui ferait de toute cette situation fort lamentable une encore plus dramatique. Donc je vais vous raconter un peu ce qu'on a fait, quelle est notre évaluation à présent de la situation après mes visites et à la centrale nucléaire sud, pas loin des actions militaires, dans l'est, sud-est du pays, et plus récemment, comme vous venez de le dire, à Tchernobyl même. Donc, pour commencer par la situation autour de Tchernobyl, I was there, as you know, Madam President, after we got information and through the normal channels that we have with Ukraine, we were following day to day. You know that by now we have issued 70-something updates, almost daily updates on the situation there. We felt that given the length of the occupation, the sensitivity of the activities there, it was essential that we could go there to do two things, basically. Two things. The first is to start extending the direct assistance that I committed to provide to the Ukrainian colleagues when we agreed on the nature of the cooperation would be extending to them at the beginning of the month of March. And the second, very important, was to perform a comprehensive evaluation of the situation over there in terms of repairs and activities that needed to be performed and the radiation situation. You may remember, and the distinguished members will remember for sure, the press reports referring to the possibility of abnormally high levels of radiation stemming from less than prudent handling of the situation by the occupying forces. So, as you know, Madam President, the nature of our work at the IAEA is to provide neutral, impartial, technical reports on situations, moving from Iran to any other thing where the IAEA works. This is the essence. This is at the center of our work. So I led a mission there. Where we came, not only myself, but I was there with a number of experts on nuclear safety, on nuclear security, on safeguards inspections, which is also and was very important because there is quite a lot of nuclear material there about which we were losing knowledge, continuity of knowledge of what was happening there. Over the space of the short mission, we were able to re-establish remote data transmission capabilities that the agency was losing. You know that we inspect not only by physical presence, but thanks to the current day technologies, we are able to follow constantly the situation on the nuclear facilities that we inspect. But some of that, because of the situation there, the occupation and other events, have been lost. So we went, we repaired, and we also established a first read out a first assessment on the situation on the ground. All of that, as you summarized very correctly in your introduction, led us to certain conclusions, which indicate that the levels experienced some increases, but nowhere near a dangerous situation. In any case, it was important for us to be there and to establish the facts, because quite naturally at this time of news and fake news and alternative realities and all these incredible things that happen, it is important to establish the facts. What is really happening? So does this mean that everything is perfect in a perfect world? No. Indeed, the situation there requires lots of work in terms of repairing capabilities, and we are doing that. Another mission is going to be heading to Chernobyl very soon. But I can say that the situation appears to have been stabilized. You mentioned, Madam President, and this is very important to me because my preoccupation is that one, the situation in and around the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, the biggest nuclear power plant site in Europe, actually. 6 reactors, very important facility there, which has been occupied since the beginning of the military operations there, and where, as you may remember, and the distinguished members as well, in the night from the 3rd to the 4th of March, there was military action taking place 200 meters from a nuclear reactor. Unthinkable. But it happened. And we were lucky that the physical integrity of the nuclear parts and the nuclear reactors was not affected there. But this happened, and from that moment on, we have been living in a very, very, I would say, fragile situation when it comes to Zaporizhia, whereby the plant continues to be operated by the Ukrainian operators from Energoatom, but there is a security control by Russian armed forces, and on top of that, there is the presence inside the facility of Russian experts, which function is not entirely clear, but these are senior people dealing with the operation of the plant, which is something that goes against, as you can imagine, every possible safety principle that we have, and the safety pillars that we have in terms of the staffing and how any facility must be run. There is potential for disagreement, there is potential for friction, there is potential for contradictory instructions, and certainly you don't want to have that in such a complex, delicate, sophisticated facility as a nuclear power plant. There are also a number of activities that our inspectors need to perform there, and they are prevented from doing that. As you know, any nuclear power plant has a number of operational activities that require that from time to time physical inventories and other monitoring activities are performed on site. Without that, we cannot ensure to the international community where that nuclear material is or what is happening with it. Let me remind the distinguished members that in the past few weeks, and even very recently, there have been statements from high officials indicating or mentioning the possibility that the Ukraine might be developing nuclear weapons. Of course, the IAEA promptly denied this, but we didn't deny this on the basis of a political consideration or my political preferences or instincts. it was simply by virtue of the fact that we are able to inspect and to confirm objectively that there is no deviation of nuclear material. But when I am confronted with a situation where in a place where we have more than 30,000 kilograms of enriched uranium and a similar amount of plutonium, and I cannot go and inspect, the possibility of allegations, accusations, doubts in the future as to the situation with this nuclear material is a very real danger and something that should be considered in all its seriousness. I have been saying this not only to our Ukrainian colleagues. As you know, I am in permanent contact with the Russian experts and the Russian government because, of course, insofar as there are nuclear facilities under the control of Russia, I have to talk to them. And I have been saying that they have to allow the IAEA experts to go to Zaporizhia. I have said, and I also discussed about this with President Volodymyr Zelensky when I visited him a few days ago, the IAEA must be there. And I have proposed to lead a mission myself to Zaporizhia in order to establish that the situation with nuclear material in the areas of safety, security is everything is in order, and also to look into these issues dealing with the double command and staffing matters that are, of course, of enormous relevance. So this, up to here, is where we are on Ukraine, and I will be more than happy to address any questions that you may have. A word on Iran, Madame la Présidente. I think that this is and should be at the top of our preoccupations in spite of the drama that it is unfolding in the Ukraine. As you know, the IAEA is the guarantor, the inspector, the monitor institution that is there to ensure that whatever is agreed at the political table of the JCPOA is being complied with. So, although we are not a party to the JCPOA, we are at the center of whatever is discussed there. And we have been accompanying, advising, and trying to support, in as much as we can, this negotiation, which, as you know, now is at a sort of a pause. You can call it in different ways. Some would say impasse, some would say frozen, some will say other things. What we know, and today is a pertinent day to evoke this, because, of course, my dear friend Enrique Mora from the European External Action Service is traveling there for consultations. My people have also been in Iran talking to the Iranian government and technical people about these issues. We are, of course, still hopeful that some agreement is going to be reached within a reasonable time frame, although we have to recognize the fact that the window of opportunity could be closed any time. The IAEA, Madame la Présidente, is also trying to clarify a number of still open matters with Iran. And when I say open matters, I am referring to the fact that we, in the last few months, were able to identify traces of enriched uranium in places that had never been declared by Iran as places where any activity was taking place. So we are extremely concerned about this. As I said to the Iranian Foreign Minister, Hamid Abdullahian, where we had a very, I would say, cordial and professional meetings in Tehran, I told him if an agreement of such political dimension and magnitude as the JCPOA is going to be finalized, I cannot imagine that this can be done when the IAEA has such serious doubts about certain things that you should have been informing the IAEA about. We are in the process. I'm not trying to pass an alarmist message to you and the distinguished members in the sense that we are at a dead end, but the situation does not look very good. Iran is, for the time being, has not been forthcoming in the kind of information we need from them. Madame la Présidente, I believe that my time is, I suppose, coming to a close. Let me perhaps just mention another area where the work of the IAEA is active and that we should keep in our, I would say, screen, which is the situation in North Korea, where the activities of the nuclear plan and the nuclear power program is moving full steam ahead, including with preparations from what could be an imminent new nuclear test. So the IAEA is working on all of these fronts. I would also like to have an opportunity to talk to you about the many areas where the IAEA is working on the promotion of human health and other things, but I suppose that we may perhaps address this in the Q&A and concentrate on those matters where distinguished members may have queries and preoccupations of a more urgent nature. I stop here and I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you once again.
I give you the floor. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Directeur Général. Je voudrais maintenant passer la parole à Witold Waszczykowski, président de la délégation pour les relations avec l'Ukraine.
Yes, thank you, Madame Loiseau. I'm sorry, the plane was a little bit delayed, so I missed the most part of the presentation on Ukraine. So I'm not going to read all the introduction which I'm supposed to read on behalf of AFET. I just want to ask, what is the idea, what's the point of Russian troops to capture Chernobyl? And maybe it was explained during your presentation, sir, but this is my question. What was the reason to capture this? The second, can we, as an international community, can we internationalize such an area as Chernobyl, for instance, and send monitors from the agency and to protect this area? And secondly, about Iran, though I'm not a member of the delegation, but used to be ambassador there to Iran. So I would like to ask you the question because a few days ago I had the chance to host the Iranian ambassador here, and he told me that actually the new JCPOA is already done deal, is negotiated. The only obstacle is the United States policy to keep the Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, on the list of terrorists. Is that right that from the Iranian side, actually, there is already agreement to accept negotiated part of the JCPOA, and the only problem is on, as ambassador claims, the only problem was on the American side. Thank you.
Merci. Je vais maintenant passer la parole à nos autres collègues, en commençant pour le PPE par Michael Gahler.
Yes, thank you very much. You referred to the fact that apparently the Russians don't give you access on site to the Zaporizhzhia plant. And my question first is, do you get any written answer on that so that you can refer to it, why they don't? Do you get any oral answer why they pretend not to give access? Or don't you get an answer at all? That is for Zaporizhzhia. On Chernobyl, there were the reports when the Russians were there and they entered, apparently the soldiers entered the site, and this, I don't know what that is called, what was built around, is it a sarcophag or a coffin that was built around, and apparently many soldiers entered without any protective clothing and caught this radiation sickness. And they also dug into the ground and came in contact with this intoxicated soil. Have you got any information, as they were apparently transferred to Belarus, some of them, allegedly in Gomel in the hospital, at least one is reported to have died. Are there any information that the IAEA got from, well, probably not from the Russians, but from Belarus perhaps, about the state of affairs in this regard? How many were actually infected by this radiation sickness, and is that a point for the IAEA to follow up? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que notre collègue Pedro Marquez des SND a...
Merci Madame Oiseau de me donner la parole. L'énergie nucléaire ne fait pas partie actuellement des sanctions de l'Union européenne contre la Russie, mais certains eurodéputés ont demandé à être inclus, et cela pourrait être un problème pour certains pays qui dépendent complètement du combustible nucléaire. Pensez-vous que le combustible nucléaire pourrait faire une partie de ces sanctions? Et deuxièmement, vous êtes en contact régulier avec les représentants de Rosatom. Vous avez même eu un entretien la semaine dernière à Istanbul. Comment vous évaluez la sécurité du transfert du combustible nucléaire de Rosatom vers les pays européens? Et y a-t-il un risque de rupture d'approvisionnement? Je vous remercie.
Merci. Pour Renew Europe, Petras Austrevicius.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Witold Waszczykowski, who is the head of the delegation with Ukraine. You know, we have to be very critical and assess the Russian actions, apart from waging an aggressive war on Ukraine, as well as using nuclear terrorism. I'm not short of words. I mean, how should we call the actions of Russia conducting military operations around Zaporizhia, or digging trenches in Chernobyl? What for? I mean, they're getting ready for offense, defense. No, this is a part of nuclear terrorism. And again, accusing Ukraine on possible production of a nuclear bomb. It's a false kind of and disinformation-based information war, as well as actions to use absolutely risky terrains as well as sites for imposing additional nuclear risks. So my first question goes to Mr. Grossi. Was any attempt from member states to question the membership of Russia as a fully fledged member of IAEA? Because Russia must be a responsible member, if it is. I doubt. I mean, they are not up to the commitments. They are not up to the conventions and those documents who prescribe members, I mean, to conduct their operations and activities accordingly. So, and was any question raised in your institution in this regard? Because we have to see who is responsible first. It's not Ukraine, I mean, which started all those things and over the sudden become a part of the, very risky and uncertain territory. My second question is, you said that you conduct activities based on objective information. I wish you were. But have you received the information, or have you required the information from the Russian side? What comes, for example, to Zaporizhia and Chernobyl? And have you been provided with this information? Thank you.
Merci. Mounir Satouri.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, mais sans vous voir.
Ah bah, et là vous me voyez. Parfait. Merci Monsieur Mariano pour votre implication pour assurer que la guerre en Ukraine ne se développe pas en catastrophe nucléaire régionale. Certains responsables politiques affirment qu'au début de l'invasion, vous avez eu des mauvaises informations sur la situation de Zaporizhia et qu'il y avait eu des coups de feu sur le site. Votre agence est clé dans la sécurité nucléaire mondiale. Il est donc crucial que vos informations soient fiables. Était-ce le cas lors de la prise de Zaporizhia et estimez-vous que c'est le cas aujourd'hui? Cette invasion russe ne révèle-t-elle pas un grand déni concernant les centrales nucléaires? Qu'en plus de la gestion très problématique de leurs déchets, les problèmes de sécurité non liés aux affrontements militaires qu'elles connaissent, elles sont toujours un risque majeur d'attaque militaire. J'aimerais connaître votre avis là-dessus en vous remerciant.
Merci. Mick Wallace.
Thanks very much, President, and thanks, Raphael, for your presentation. I always find them very interesting. A few points. The first one on Zaporizhia. I might understand, I mean, the Russians are in control of it. Is it just military, or is there nuclear people on site? And if there is, I mean, you were saying that you cooperate strongly with the Russian nuclear people on a regular basis. So I'm just wondering, have you had the opportunity to talk to the nuclear? First of all, is there nuclear people there, and have you had any communication with them if they are? My second point on Iran, and it was a very interesting point by Mr. Wasilewski. I'm just wondering. Also, if he was saying that, if the ambassador was saying that the Revolutionary Guard being continued to be classified as terrorists could possibly be holding up the agreement, do you think that the Americans are genuine in wanting to get the JCPOA back on track again? And in relation to your point about, you said that there's been uranium found in places that you wouldn't have expected or didn't know about before in Iran, which is really concerning. So, I mean, is there concerns that Iran is, if they don't get the JCPOA on track soon, are they going to just kind of go their own way and start developing nuclear power? I'd just like your comment on that. And just my last two quick questions on a general basis. The Trump administration withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which is a Cold War era piece of arms control between the US and Russia, that prohibited the development of medium-range nuclear and ballistic missiles. How concerned are you that this still hasn't got back on track? Because I would imagine that this is pretty crucial. And my last point, just recently, China called on the US and Russia to substantially slash their nuclear arsenals. China has between seemingly 300 and 350 warheads, whereas the Americans have over 5,000 and the Russians have over 6,000. Is there any potential for progress in this area? And I'm conscious of the fact that the US are planning to overhaul and replace a huge tranche of their nuclear and looking at spending about 1.5 trillion. I'm just wondering if you are involved in that end of it. And thank you very much.
Merci, et je passe donc la parole à Raphaël Grossi pour répondre à ces différentes questions.
Toutes des questions très pertinentes. Je vais essayer de les adresser toutes. First of all, President Wachowski, thank you for the two questions. first, Chernobyl, you asked me why did the Russians took this place. Well, let me tell you, I asked them exactly the same question. Exactly the same. I asked them, why did you do this? And let me be very honest, as I should, with you. What they told me is that they did this to prevent acts of sabotage, which they expected to take place at this in this facility. So I'm just transmitting to you what I was told. But as I was as surprised as you were, I asked the question directly to them. In terms of the presence there and internationalization and other things that you evoke in your first question, let me say that we are already there, that the IAEA is already there. We have returned. So the international presence is us, because we are, we don't have any other flag than the international flag. So that in this case, I think we are moving in a relatively positive direction, in that the situation seems to be more stable now. We are in close and direct and permanent contact with the plant, with the operators, and we have our people visiting there. The big question mark is Zaporizhzhia, and we are going to go back to that in the next questions. The second question you put was on Iran, and you said that the Iranian ambassador, which you hosted a few days ago, told you that JCPOA is done, with the exception of this issue about the sanctions and the inclusion of the Revolutionary Guard in the sanctions list. I think by and large this is correct. By and large, there are some details, but the general impression is that the nuclear, if you ask about the nuclear parts, the JCPOA is an incredibly complex agreement. It's a diplomatic, political, international law agreement, but at the same time it has a lot of technical annexes. And I would say that by and large that work has been completed, but of course the issue of how to deal with the sanctions and how to deal with the inclusion of some Iranians in the lists is still an obstacle. So I would say this is correct. Mr. Galler, you were talking about Zaporizhzhia and why was it so difficult, and whether had I received a negative answer from Russia. Let me say, Mr. Galler and distinguished colleagues, here the problem is a terribly complex one, because it is not only about Russia, it's also about Ukraine. Because in my negotiations and in my conversations with both, there is no doubt that this is the territory of Ukraine and the plant belongs to Ukraine. But at the same time, I deal with realities, and the reality is that this plant is under Russian military control. So I have to talk to both. The issue there is that they both agree that I come, but that I can come under their respective flags. Otherwise, I shouldn't come. So it is a bit of a schizophrenic situation I'm trying to deal with. And sorry for the characterization, which might seem a bit light, and the problem is a very serious one. But the reality is this. I am confronted with a situation where the format, the political modalities of the visit are even more important for them than the technical mission that I need to perform. So unfortunately, the issue is a bit more complicated than that. We are not at a dead end. I am talking to both to try to look for a way in which our inspectors and myself could visit. Your second question was about the situation in Chernobyl, and in particular on the last day, the 30th and the 31st of March, where the Russians left and the situation there. Let me correct you in the sense that they never went into the sarcophagus or the containment The problems that have been mentioned have to do with the activities that some of the occupation forces could have been performing in the surrounding areas of what is called the exclusion zone around you know, in Chernobyl you have these 4 reactors, 3 of them, of course, in permanent shutdown, and Unit 4, the famous or infamous, where the accident took place, which is under this big construction, this sarcophagus. So it is in the perimeter, in the big perimeter, where there were some excavations. Some call them trenches. Technically speaking, we talk about excavations because I don't know, my inspectors don't know what the purpose of them were, and our experts were able to go there. If you look or if you ask your staffers to give you the report that I published upon my return from Chernobyl, you will see even photos of my people taking measurements in this around these excavations where these activities took place. I characterize them as imprudent. Of course, in an exclusion zone where there are remaining traces of radiation and possible radiation, you shouldn't be digging digs or walking around. So I don't think it was prudent. I don't know. I'm not privy with the decisions of the military commanders in place. The good news is that what happened was, albeit bad, it didn't leave any permanent consequence there. Madame Yoncheva, vous référez à la question de la technologie, du combustible nucléaire, toutes des questions fort pertinentes. Je crois que c'est un fait, et vous l'avez évoqué, il y a sur le territoire européen beaucoup de technologies russes et des réacteurs qui ont été fournis et fabriqués par la compagnie Rosatom et qui consomment du combustible. Et il existe des alternatives, mais je crois que ça relève de la décision nationale souveraine de chaque État de continuer ou pas. Et je crois que dans l'espace, dans la famille européenne, vous avez déjà des exemples des pays qui ont décidé d'interrompre ces liens commerciaux avec Rosatom et d'autres qui, contrairement à cela, ont décidé de continuer. Donc je pense que c'est une question, je dirais, qui relève d'une décision commerciale plutôt qu'autre chose. Des alternatives existent, mais chaque pays doit décider. Je crois qu'il faut toujours garder en tête l'importance de la sécurité et de la sûreté dans chaque décision qu'on puisse prendre pour ce qui est de la continuité ou pas d'un fournisseur nucléaire. Mr. Austrevicius, you were referring in your introduction also to what happened in and around Chernobyl. I think in my answer to Mr. Galler, I referred to part of this. You also referred to the membership of the IAEA at the membership of Russia at the IAEA. This is something that has been mentioned in some of the discussions. As you know, this is not a decision of the Director General to incorporate or to expel a member state from the IAEA. There has to be a decision taken by member states in accordance to well-established procedures. So it is up to the membership and not to the Director General to decide who is in and who is out. And I can say that there hasn't been any move in that direction. So you may make your own analysis of the reasons about this. It's not to me. But these are the facts. You also asked in the last part of your intervention about the information, whether to base my assessments on objective information, do I receive information from the plants and from the Russians? Of course we do. We receive information from the Russians, we receive information from the Ukrainians, which are our normal interlocutors, and we validate them. Every information we receive, we validate, we check it before incorporating them in our technical analysis. Monsieur Saturi, vous avez évoqué la question de problèmes de sécurité, mais vous avez évoqué, je crois, ou vous avez impliqué que des questions de sécurité seraient inhérentes aux installations nucléaires, même au-delà de la question de la guerre en ce moment. Moi, je crois, je ne suis pas d'accord. Je pense que la question de la sécurité de la sûreté nucléaire, quand bien gérée par l'État et en collaboration avec l'AIEA, n'est pas un problème. C'est une question qui doit être gérée selon des critères stricts de sécurité et de sûreté. Et par ailleurs, vous avez vu, je crois qu'il y a des informations à propos du bombardement des installations, je crois qu'une distillerie aujourd'hui ou hier. Les problèmes, ce n'est pas la technologie, les problèmes, c'est la guerre, mon cher collègue. Donc, une guerre, n'importe laquelle, peut s'attaquer à des éléments de l'infrastructure nationale du pays attaqué. Et c'est ça le problème. Et c'est ça les problèmes. Donc, et c'est ça qu'il faut éviter. Moi, soyez sûrs, nous, et je crois qu'il est clair, l'Agence internationale de l'énergie atomique, à part les humanitaires, c'est la seule organisation internationale en présence en Ukraine. Et ça répond à ma conviction personnelle de notre mission si importante d'aider l'Ukraine à préserver cette partie de son infrastructure. Si j'ai bien compris votre question, très, très importante. Mr. Wallace, good to see you again. It is you are referring to the controls and the situation again in Zaporizhia. Here I may add to what I said before. We have a very peculiar situation in Zaporizhia, in that, as I said in the beginning, you have a coexistence of Ukrainian operators that are actually, manning, handling, and doing the day-to-day work there, but they are under military authority of the occupying power. And on top of that, you have some Russian experts that are there, which is what worries me, because basically you may have potential for disagreement or for less than clear situations that may lead to accidents. And this is why we have been saying this is abnormal. In the second question you referred to Iran. And you mentioned two things. You referred to the American disposition and the outstanding issues that we have with Iran. Regarding the American disposition to have an agreement, I can confirm to you that in my conversations with Secretary Blinken or National Security Advisor Sullivan or Special Envoy for Iran, Rob Malley, they all have at all times confirmed to me that they do want an agreement with Iran, and that this is up to today, until today, if nothing changes, this has been the instruction given to them by President Joe Biden. So this is what I can tell you. On the outstanding issues in Iran, I think these are serious matters. As I said, we have been able to identify traces of activities about which we know nothing, and activities and places that should have never been any presence of nuclear material. So we are simply asking them to Iran in a very straightforward way. I am a very straightforward person. I am asking them, why do I find traces of enriched uranium at a place where there was never or you never declared a nuclear activity or a nuclear installation. Why? What is the equipment that was here? We have images. Where is that? What were you using this for? If it's not included in your national declaration. And I tell them this because they are talking about confidence, they are talking about trust, they are talking about their place in the community of nations, and I'm all for that. But quite clearly, they have to come clean with this. They have to explain why have we, and not only in one place, in several places, which had never, ever been identified as places where nuclear activities had been taking place, there were traces of nuclear. You know, Mr. Wallace, the technology has evolved so much now that you can build, a 10-story high building in a place where you had some nuclear activity. We will still find traces of that. You can cover it, you can paint them, you can put whatever, a zoological park. We're going to find the traces. And this is what is happening. We are finding it. So tell us. Very simple. Then INF. Well, and your two last questions are connected, and you are referring to disarmament. Actually, if I get the sense of your questions correctly, we know that nuclear disarmament is a shared objective of the international community, enshrined in the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which says in one of its articles that there should be a commitment in good faith. This is what is written in this treaty. There should be nuclear disarmament. Unfortunately, what we see is that this process, given the tensions, and some of them we have been discussing in this very important session, given the tensions that unfortunately are prevailing again in the international scene, we do not seem to be moving towards nuclear disarmament. Unfortunately, it is in the opposite direction. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Raphaël Grossi, pour votre engagement et celui de l'Agence internationale de l'énergie atomique dans ce moment aussi délicat. Merci pour vos réponses précises à nos interrogations et à nos inquiétudes. Chers collègues, sur un sujet aussi sérieux, vous disposez, grâce à cet échange, des faits. Chacun peut avoir son opinion, mais il est d'abord indispensable de respecter les faits. J'espère qu'en ayant connaissance des faits, aucun membre de notre sous-commission ne se laissera aller à propager des fake news. C'est un espoir, pas une certitude, mais je vous engage, chers collègues, à vous souvenir que désormais, grâce ou à cause des réseaux sociaux, les paroles s'envolent moins que par le passé et que les faits, eux, sont têtus. Je vous remercie et nous reprenons notre séance tout à l'heure à 13h45.